All right, the ecological component. We have 3 streams in the West Fork Gallatin River that have TMDLs. The West Fork, the Middle Fork West Fork, and the South Fork West Fork. So this TMDL, or total maximum daily load, is the maximum amount of a pollutant a water body can receive and still meet water quality standards. These were developed in this area in 2010, and a watershed restoration plan was developed in 2012. Still get it right here. All right, so this is the map of the West Fork watershed here. You see the South Fork, a major tributary in yellow, kind of outline in the bottom, and the 2 other tribs in the Upper West Fork, the Middle Fork West Fork, and the main stem of the West Fork. What I want to show here, kind of with the pointer, both of these are divided into 2 different segments for kind of the TMDL purposes. So the Middle Fork is divided at Lake Levinsky. Above and below, they're kind of different criteria. And the West Fork is divided upstream and downstream of the South Fork. So looking at the TMDLs, I'm not going to go through all the numbers, but for the Middle Fork, West Fork up there in the top red box, upstream of Lake Levinsky, there's a 33% reduction required for nitrate plus nitrite. There's no reduction required downstream of Lake Levinsky. For the South Fork, while a TMDL has been calculated, or not calculated, the TMDL has been calculated, but an existing load has not been calculated, and there is no reduction required there. The West Fork, upstream of where the South Fork comes in, has TMDLs both for nitrate plus nitrite and total nitrogen, and you're looking at a 33 to 6% reduction. After the South Fork comes in, there's still a total maximum daily load, but we're currently below it, so there's no reduction required. Just here's the targets, for those nutrients, nitrates and nitrites, nitrogen. The important point to kind of look at here. What in the... Oh boy! Went all the way down.
Minimize that. Minimize it.
All right, the closer here is a little shaky. See, these are summer standards.
We got extra innings.
Nutrient standards are only applicable in the summer, July through September 30th. In the TMDL, the nutrient sources that were identified are natural background sources, residential and resort, landscape management, on-site septic, unpermitted wastewater, which would be through the spray irrigation, or potential sewer line leakages. And the reason these are concerned because it leads to undesirable algae growth, and it can impair the stream's recreational and aquatic life uses. There's one E. coli TMDL, and that is on the Middle Fork. 55% reduction required. Similar to nutrients, there's different standards for summer and winter, so it's a higher criteria standard in summer when people are going to be out in the rivers. The sources that have been identified are domestic pets, livestock, wildlife, wildfowl, waterfowl, stormwater runoff from paved surfaces, failing and malfunctioning septic systems, broken sewer lines. What's not a source is the land application of treated effluent, since that is disinfected before application. And the reason this is important is in-stream concentrations are elevated with pathogenic pollutants. It puts people at risk for diseases, and that impacts a recreational use of the river. So I'm going to go through kind of the pros and cons of some of these different treatment and disposal options. Land application. One of the pros is this is what's currently being used. You've seen it's being applied on the Big Sky Golf Course, the Yellowstone Club Golf Course, Spanish Peaks Golf Course. So there's infrastructure in place for this. This is a beneficial reuse, and there's no permits required because it's designed to have zero discharge to both ground and surface water. The cons requires large overwintering in large storage ponds. We've seen some of the hazards associated with that. You have a short time frame for discharge, May 1 through October 1, kind of irrigation season. As Ron was saying, if it's a wet summer, there's a need to get rid of excess water. There's potential impacts to TMDL streams we've looked at. And it requires third-party agreements for the use of the land. For surface water discharge, some of the pros include, the centralized treatment is kind of the long-term, more mature solution. Reduced need for the septic systems. It's measurable and manageable, kind of direct out of pipe, kind of quantifiable what you're putting in the rivers. The resource is not consumed. You can get improved in-stream flows. With the current kind of plant, they could meet the permitting requirements for the winter, and there's no TMDLs on the main stem of the Gallatin River. Cons for this, as we've seen kind of through the history of this area, there's a negative public perception to surface water discharge. To implement this fully, you'd require expanding the treatment plant and new equipment. You'd need additional permitting and treatment for summer discharge. And we are talking about nutrient TMDLs on the West Fork River. Snowmaking, which has been touched upon, some of the pros here is you provide natural water storage. The water is released kind of with snowmelt during the spring runoff. You can get aquifer recharge, improved late season flows, and an economic benefit of expanded ski season, particularly in that kind of Thanksgiving, late November time period. Cons, negative public perception of skiing on snow that's made from treated wastewater. There's a high energy and labor requirement. As was mentioned, you need a surface water discharge permit. There are nutrient TMDLs on both streams, kind of draining the headwaters of the West Fork and the South Fork, West Fork. And there's also unknowns in this in terms of the pharmaceuticals and the personal care products that might be in that water. Groundwater discharge, talking about deep well injection and engineered drain fields. Some of the pros are these have positive public perceptions. You can get some aquifer recharge. Some of the cons being permitting challenges, technical difficulties due to complex geologies, the potential to degrade the groundwater resource. These are difficult to monitor and to measure, and you'd have scarce land resources in this area to kind of develop a large drain field system. Individual septic and small community systems, which we've touched on today. Some of the pros are that they can be implemented by individual homeowners and developers at a relatively low cost that is dispersed among the property owners. The cons is that it's hard to assess the cumulative impacts of these multiple systems at the watershed scale and difficult to measure and monitor kind of at the large scale. It's difficult to maintain over time, that was talked about earlier, with a lack of education and understanding of homeowners as these properties change ownership for system maintenance and environmental impacts. Lastly, I want to talk about constructed wetlands. Some of the pros, these have effectively been applied in other places, such as in Europe. They're currently being used on small scale at Bridger Bowl. There's local knowledge with MSU researchers working on that, and they've shown that these can be applied in cold climates. Some of the cons require a large land area, generally relatively simple ecosystems instead of kind of a really diverse, complex wetland, and there are questions about the long-term effectiveness relative to nutrient attenuation. So I'm going to, one more thing here. And just to kind of bring it back, we're talking about the headwaters of the Gallatin here, the Gallatin-Madison watersheds feeding into the Missouri River system, the cumulative effect of nutrient loading impacts downstream rivers and reservoirs. I'm going to try to show a quick movie here on a snowmaking pilot project that was conducted up at Yellowstone Club.
My name is Rich Chandler. I'm the environmental manager here at the Yellowstone Club, and I'm also part of the Wastewater Solutions Forum here in Big Sky. And together we were faced with a challenge several years ago in that looking forward into the future, there's going to be an over-storage issue in the winter with effluent water within the Big Sky Meadow. What we've investigated is some opportunities to utilize effluent in the snowmaking process. And this site's a 2-acre plot. It's going to receive 1 million gallons total of effluent through the snowmaking process. And it's our hopes that at the end of this pilot test, we're able to capture a lot of the water both through the snowmaking process, through core samples of the snowpack, and most importantly during the runoff process this spring. And if our tests show that this actual snowmaking process is another means of treatment for Class A effluent, then there's a really good chance the DEQ is going to be open to us utilizing this as a resource for effluent storage in our upper watershed reaches. So what we're doing is we're creating a full cycle within our own localized watershed, and the potential is that it's going to clean up the Gallatin River extensively. This is a larger project than just us now. This is a long-term project that is for the generations to follow. It's all of our goal to create a cleaner Gallatin River, and this is just one step in ensuring that we do our part as local citizens of Big Sky.
Thank you, and thank you for your quick stop narration while this came in. Since we didn't know you were going to.
I was hoping
Well,
there's
just a
some
little more
answers.
color on that. What happened with that? Todd worked on that with us a lot. Ron worked on that. We got all the pipes and the generators up there and did that. But really, what you're looking at with that snowmaking, the results of that is you need a discharge permit for that too. So if you can imagine, you build up all this snow, and it's great to preserve your water asset for spring runoff, but it has nutrients in it as well. So you don't have plants eating your nutrients in the water as it runs off. So you end up with a discharge into the waterways that's non-consumed by plant life. So it kind of ended up in the same results as a discharge permit. The only thing that what were you going to say, Scott?
I was going to say, wasn't one of the challenges also that DEQ prohibits application of treated wastewater for snowmaking on any slopes greater than 3%?
Yeah, that was they wanted it seen either in a closed basin or a discharge permit, because then you have velocity issues of all this snow stored out there. So you have sedimentation velocity issues that might be a result of your spring runoff. So yeah, there's some challenges with the snowmaking. It sounds very good and great, but there's equal challenges to discharges into the river as well.
But it is an option that's being utilized in other places, like in Kiribati, I think.
Yeah, and we will talk about that when we get to community